and so on. So your expectation is also affected by will also affect your demand. Okay, and the last factor which affects demand, or one of the last factor, is that number of buyers. So if there are more buyers of a good, the demand for that good is much higher. For example, if previously there were only 5 people buying ice cream at the same price, but now there are 5 other people also joined them. So now when each of them buys 1 cone of ice cream, then before it was 5 cones, but now 5 other people also have moved to the city or to this place. So now they are also buying 1 cone per week. So the demand is now 10 cones of ice cream per week. So if there are more buyers, if there are more individual buyers, remember that we said that the individual demand adds up to make the market demand. So their demand will also increase. I'm repeating again that all these other factors will affect the demand regardless of the price. So we have been not talking about the price. Okay, so far I've been talking about the demand. Now I will quickly talk about the supply, and then hopefully we will be able to put both of them together and have our equilibrium. So supply is basically the opposite of the demand. So whatever we have said so far, if you turn it from the consumer point of view or from the buyer point of view to the producer point of view, that will be the supplier. So supplier of the good is those who supply or those who produce these goods and offer it in the market. In short term, supply is basically it explains the behavior of sellers. Okay, so the same that we have demand curve which slopes downward, we have the supply curve which moves upward. So if you see in the figure 5 of the book, you see that the prices of ice cream is on the vertical axis and the quantity demanded is on the horizontal axis. And if you match these points, you will get the supply curve. And what the supply says is that when the price of a product increases, the quantity supply also increases. So now you have to change your perspective, not from the buyer's point of view, but from the producer's point of view. So think when we are talking about supply, you should consider that you are a shopkeeper who is selling ice cream. So now you see that the ice cream prices are rising. So either it's summer or whatsoever. So you see that before the price of one ice cream was one euro, now it's 1.20. So what you should do as a producer of ice cream is that you should produce more ice cream, because if you're selling more ice cream, you will have more money coming in. So when the prices of the ice cream increases, regardless of what, then producers will try to sell more ice cream. So they will increase their quantity supplied. So yeah, so the supply curve is moving upward. So it's like from the origin it goes up, and you can see it in the figure 5 of the book. And the supply curve actually shows the relationship between price and quantity supplied. So it shows at different prices how much of ice cream will be supplied in the market. And of course, when the price is high, so what happens is that suppliers want to supply more and more of the ice cream. Yeah, so quantity supplied is the amount of goods and services and the amount of a good that sellers are willing and able to sell. So that's the quantity supplied. And also the same as the law of demand. The law of supply says that the claim that other things being equal, the quantity supplied of a good rises when the price of that good rises. So people will supply more if the price increases, so people will also supply more and more of that good. And you can also have the same supply schedule, which shows the different relationship between prices and quantity supplied. So it shows you, okay, for example, in figure 5, you can see the price of ice cream when it is 50 cents, then nobody will offer an ice cream for sale. When it is 1 USD or 1 euro, they will only sell one, and if it's 1.50, they will sell two, and if the price is 2 euros, they will sell three, and so on. So you see, when the prices increases, remember we are talking from the producer point of view. So the price increase, what happens is that we also increase our production or increase the amount of ice cream that we want to sell. Okay, so you see this in figure 5 in the book. The same as we talked about the individual demand and market demand, there is also the concept of market supply and individual supply. So individual supply is when one shop of ice cream producers produce the market. So it's like one seller called Tom or Benny or Jerry, for example. So if Ben is supplying ice cream, so it's his individual supply in the market. And if Jerry is also supplying in the market, so it's his individual. And if we want to see how much ice cream is supplied in the market, and these are the two, for example, suppliers, then we add horizontally the amount of ice creams they supply at a given price. For example, when the price is 1 euro, Benny produce one and Jerry does not produce, so the total market supplied is 1. But if we see when the price is 2, Ben will produce 3 and Jerry will produce 4, and the total market supply of ice cream, for example, will be 7 cones of ice cream in the market. Okay, so when you add up individual supply together, you get the market supply of that product. Okay, so we have again a shift in the supply curve. So it's the same as the demand curve, so I will not talk that much about it. I will only talk about the factors which affects or which shifts the supply curve. In the interest of time, I will not repeat the concept, but briefly I would say that there could be like the change in supply which moves alongside the curve, so there is no new curve, for example, and that's because of the price. So if the price increases, more supply of that product will be available in the market. So that's a change, and that's the change in the supply. What shifts in the supply means it's actually increase in the supply. So what time this happens, what time the supply shifts, it happens when other factors affect the market, all other factors except the price of that product. What are these other factors? For example, one of them is the input price. For example, you are producing ice cream, and for producing ice cream you need cream or milk or sugar, so these are your inputs. And if the price of this input decreases, so your cost goes down, what happens that now you can supply more ice creams in the market. So when the prices of input decreases, it's cheaper to produce ice cream, so you can produce more ice creams. Second topic is the technology. So when there is a change in the technology, for example, it's much easier to make ice cream, you will also supply more ice cream to the market. And third is the expectation. So if you see something is going to change in the future, you will also that will also affect your supply of ice creams in the market. And the last topic is also that the number of sellers. So if there are a lot of ice cream sellers, each seller is supplying some ice cream, so the total supply will be increased in the market. Or if there are fewer sellers, so there is few amount of ice cream being offered at a given price. Okay, I will repeat for the last time. The last four topics I have said, it has nothing to do with the price. So the price remains the same, and this change in the supply is because other things affect the supply in the market, and that's how the supply either increases or decreases. Okay, we are running a little bit out of time, but I will keep it short. So I have two topics. I will go briefly through it, and then it's over for today. Okay, so now we have talked about supply. You know about supply, and you also know about the demand. So the interesting point is that when you put both of the supply and demand curve together, you will achieve the market equilibrium. So if you put the supply curve and demand curve based on the reference of the price, so you say, okay, if the price is €1, so if I say it like, okay, if the price is €1, the price of ice cream is €1, people will buy 5 ice creams. And if you put the supply side, for example, from the producer point of view, producers will say, if the price is one, for example, €1, we will also supply that much of the ice creams. So if you put both of them together, both of these curves together, and as, for example, intersect at the point where the price is 1 and the quantity demand is on the horizontal axis 5, this 5 ice cream at the price of 1 is actually the market equilibrium. And the price €1 is called the equilibrium price, and the quantity 5 is called the equilibrium quantity. So that was a general definition. I will go to the book definition of equilibrium. So equilibrium is a situation in which the market price has reached a level at which quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. So you will say a market reaches an equilibrium when the quantity supplied and the quantity demanded matches each other at a given price. If you see in the book in figure 8, you see the supply curve and demand curve, and then the equilibrium price where these 2 points intersect is $2, and the equilibrium quantity is $7. So you say like the market for ice cream reaches the equilibrium at the quantity of 7 ice creams and at the price of $2. So the $2 price is called the equilibrium price, and the 7 cones of ice cream is called equilibrium quantity. And this point where both intersects is called the equilibrium. I think that should be clear for you. If not, I will read the equilibrium price definition. The equilibrium price is the price that balances the quantity supplied and quantity demanded. So the equilibrium price actually balances the quantity demand and supply in a market, and it's also called like the market clearing price. So at this price, those who want to supply 7 ice cream, they sell all of their ice cream, and those who wanted 7 ice cream at the price of 2, they also buy 7 ice creams. So the market is clear, there is no extra ice cream left, or there is no shortage of the ice cream in the market. Okay, that brings us to 2 other short definitions. Okay, I will, if you see at figure 9 in the book, there are two terms. One is called surplus and another is called shortage. What is surplus? A situation in which quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded. So there is surplus. Surplus is something like extra. So producers are providing a lot of ice cream in the market, but nobody's actually buying it either because it's expensive or whatsoever. So what happens is that there is a surplus of ice cream in the market. There is more ice cream than the people actually want to buy. So in this situation, it's a surplus. And if you see in the graph in figure 9, it's above the equilibrium. So this, for example, at the price 2.5, um, because it's above equilibrium price of 2, the suppliers will produce 10 ice creams, but people only buy 7. So there is like extra 3 ice creams left, and that is a surplus. If you turn the concept other way around, that will result in a shortage in the market. What is a shortage? It's a situation in which quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied. So shortage, like people want to have ice cream, but there is no ice cream. That's to put it in a simple terms. When that happens, so of course this shortage is below the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. For example, the equilibrium price is 2, but uh, if would be like 1.5, so people will demand, for example, 10 ice creams, but the producer only produced 7 of them, so there is a 3 ice cream shortage in the market. So in simple words, shortage happens when there is more demand but there is not enough supply, and that's how we face a shortage, and it happens when the price is below the equilibrium price. Okay, if you see in the there is a short topic called 3 steps to analyze change in equilibrium. So far we have said like, okay, this is the equilibrium when the supply and demand curve intersects, but because we also said that the demand curve sometimes changes and also supply changes sometimes, so it's not a static, it's a dynamic thing. So it changes, I don't know, due to government policies, due to snow weather catastrophe, pandemic like corona and whatsoever. So anything which affects the supply and demand, it also changes the market equilibrium. So all you have to do is go back and see how supply has been affected by this policy or by this event, and how demand has been affected. And that's how you can actually see the consequences of this policy or events which has affected the market. There are 3 steps that you can take in order to analyze a change in the equilibrium, and it's in the table 3 and page 79. I will read it to you. The first one is decide whether the event shifts the supply or demand curve. So if government change if a government change a policy, for example on ice cream, first thing you have to see, okay, is this policy affecting the demand side? Is it affecting the buyers, or is it affecting the sellers or the supply side? So you have to first find that one. What you do next is decides in which direction the curve shifts. So you see, okay, this government policy affected the supply side, so it's affecting the producers. And then you see, will this policy increase the quantity of the ice cream, for example, supplied, or will it decrease it? So your next job is to see the shifts in this curve, and then The third step is use the supply and demand diagram to see how the shifts changes the equilibrium price and quantity. So once one of these two curves, either supply or demand, has changed or moved, you have to use the same the equilibrium graph to see how the equilibrium price and quantity has moved. Um, there are few examples in a book which I highly recommend that you read and you go through, and they follow these three steps, and then they explain how that basically helps to understand how a policy or event affect the market. And in figure 12, they present this graphically, so you know if there is a change in either supply or demand, how that affects equilibrium, and how that affects the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. All right, we are almost, we have 5 minutes left from 1 hour. So I will come to this closing point of this topic, which is the conclusion and how prices allocate resources. Okay, so I will start with, so what what brought the supply and demand curve together? So what are the common factors in both of these is actually the price. So we have price affecting demand, and we also have price affecting the supply. So price is very much important in determining the supply and demand of a market, and that's why it's actually called by Adam Smith the invisible hand. So it's like a hand that we don't see it, but it actually affects how the market system works. And yeah, so it's an invisible hand. It helps us understand how a market works. Not only help us understand how the market works, but it also sends signals to both buyers and produce to both buyers and sellers how to behave. So how much to produce, or so it can tell us much both to producers and buyers, and a lot of the decisions are basically made by the price in a market. I will give two examples. For example, uh, so there is one concept that scarce resources have to be allocated among competitive uses. So we said like resources are limited and we have to put resources in its best use. And that's how the price comes and tell us like, okay, um, this area or this market is good for you, so you have to put your resources in use in this market. So this invisible hand or the price gives us the signal where we should put our limited resources, which can have a maximum benefit. I will come to the example later, but I'm just clearing these concepts now. And also market economies through supply and demand serve to that ends. So the supply and demand basically tries to put the resources, the limited resources, where it's most required or necessary. For example, we all need, this example is also mentioned in the book, that everyone needs food and clothes or whatsoever, like whatever item we need in this in our life, we are provided with that. Take the example of food, for example. So those who are working in farms and agriculture sector. So if there is a market system or the market economy, no one is going to tell someone that okay, you should be a farmer, you have to produce for the people, we need vegetables, fruit, wheat, I don't know, tomato, whatsoever. So nobody is doing that because it's a free market, everyone is free to put their own labor and the best use they wanted to do. So what happens is that if a person decides, okay, should I work in a farm or should I work a different job? It all depends on the uh, one way that they could decide is, or one way which is also detrimental, is the price system. So they see, okay, I have land, either I can make a factory or I can either produce food and agriculture and other stuff. And then they see, like, if production of goods, if production of food and vegetable is more profitable, or if the prices of product of food and vegetables are much higher, then this person will choose to work in farm. So he will be working in a farm and he will be taking part in the production of goods and food and fruits and other stuff. So what I mean is that in a free market economy, that was one example. You see millions of people, they're doing millions different types of work, and they also put their own individual resources. It could be their labor, it could be their land, it could be their capital. So using the price mechanism as a giving signal to them, they put their resources in an area where it's more beneficial to them. Probably it will be a little bit early to totally understand this concept, but in the coming two chapter, the next one is about the elasticity of demand and supply, and then the next one is about the government policies. If it's not clear yet, we will work on that and we will understand more how the supply and demand and the price system affects market economies, and how that's basically a very efficient way of allocating resources. Okay, so I'm almost 1 hour now. Yeah, it's 1 hour now, so that's also the end of our lecture today. I hope you enjoyed the session and see you in the coming lectures. Have a nice day.